Testing, testing.
Am I on?
Wow.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I'm there too. Look at me up there. Okay.
Do you want to start?
I can start then. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shams. I'm the performer at Laiylah, Laiylah. In a moment, there's going to be a picture up there that flashes up of me in my drag persona, my female self, so you can get an idea of who I am. I want to share with you some insights that I found in studying my religion, which is Islam, one of the world's three major monotheistic religions. It's the baby out of the three monotheistics, of course, being Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Yes, that is me there in my drag persona and illustration, which I always thought was pretty cool, and I said I was going to use that as my image going forward for that. So if we could go ahead and bring up that first slide, please. You can move on from the Laiylah one to next. Yes, so we're going to be discussing queerness in the Islamicate world in ancient and modern times. Now, Islamicate just simply means the world of Islam. In Arabic, that would be Islamia. I do not speak Arabic, but I've studied things enough to know and research and see everything to the best of my ability. So Islamia is, I guess you might say, like Christendom. I'm going to try and give you as many references as I can that I can find in Islam to Christianity so you can see how much things are related to one another. So next slide, please. Do queer Muslims exist? That it's clear that we do. I mean, you know, for some reason, people just think that you cannot be a person of spirituality, religiosity, and a homosexual, transgender, non-binary, et cetera, et cetera. But I hope that through my modest lecture here on this lectern, that you would see that there has, in fact, in the past and in the present times, been Muslims who identify as homosexuals or the broader term of queer. Next slide, please. Seriously, do we exist? Hello, Allah, it's me, it's Shams. I don't know if anyone else remembers that book from the 80s. I think it was Hello God, it's me, Margaret, and it was about this little girl who was getting her first period and the trials and tribulations of being a young girl. So that's just a throwback to my youth. But it is a simple question that I think that all of us as people of faith have to ask ourselves, do we have a place in God despite what we've been taught from our religious traditions? And especially for myself and for those of us who are Muslims, because I'm not sure if too many people are aware, if you happen to live in a quote unquote Middle Eastern Muslim state, unfortunately, there can be grave penalties for being a homosexual, such as in Saudi Arabia, Iran, even some places in Africa. And in Africa, you don't even have to be a Muslim. There's like in Uganda, which is a traditional Christian nation, they are very anti-homosexual. So I'm not going to go over all of the horrible things. I'm just going to show you some things that hopefully you will go and research yourself so that in your studies and in your life, when you do come across someone who's queer and Muslim, you can say, oh, I know a little bit of something about that. And maybe that person can share a little more from their personal journey. So next slide, please. We remember this dude here, yes, from like 10 years ago when he visited the US and he said that, and in Iran, we do not have homosexuals like in your country. Now, 10 years later, we realize that there has been this the young woman who was killed most likely by the police while they had her arrested, and she wasn't wearing her headscarf permissibly. And as a Muslim man, I don't have to wear a headscarf, but according to tradition, Muslim men are supposed to grow their beard. And that's something that's not found in the Quran. At least for men, it's growing your beard, which is outside of the Quranic text. For women, it is questionable. The mandate actually, supposedly, that Allah sent the message to the Prophet's wives, because in Islam, a man can have more than one wife. And it seems that it was more of a thing that the women of the Muslim community wanted to emulate the Prophet's wives, and so they started covering their hair. Do Muslim women cover their hair? Clearly. Do they have to cover their hair? That is an open debate. The traditional scholars say absolutely 100%, and yet, supposedly in the religion, there is supposed to be no compulsion, meaning that you can't force someone to do it. I.e., if you go to any Muslim country, you will see men who identify as Muslim who are clean shaven. They are not obeying the Islamic law, and yet men are not persecuted for the most part for not wearing their beard. I'm almost 40, I'm almost 50. I like wearing my beard. There are some pictures on my IG where you can even see me without, where I am clean shaven when I'm doing drag. But I like my beard, and I like my gray hairs in it because I enjoy, and I think that I'm attractive for my age, so I enjoy it. Thank you. Next slide, please. So even though saying I wasn't going to get into too many horrible things, we're going to come to the most important text in the religion of Islam, Al-Quran. As you can see, it is the book of Allah, in the words of Allah, in human speech, Arabic in between two covers. It is the prime source of Islamic doctrine, regarded as perfect in containing instructions for humanity until the day of judgment. Yes, we as Muslims also believe in the day of judgment, and there is also, we traditionally in both Sunni Islam and Shia Islam, we are actually looking for the return of Jesus as well. That is not something found in the Quran. That is outside in the other books that we'll cover very briefly. The Quran is infallible and inerrant. That means that it does not have any errors in it in the sense of scientific. We use it very broadly to stretch, to encompass things. For instance, even in the Bible in the Old Testament, when it says that God created the universe in 7 days. Well, if there was no sun, how could you count a day? The word day in both Hebrew and Arabic means a period of time. So that could have been billions of years. It could have been, the age of the universe is roughly 19 billion years, we say, but who knows? Only Allah knows. The Quran was revealed over 23 years by Prophet Muhammad, or to Prophet Muhammad. Whenever we mention Muhammad, peace be upon him, or any of the other prophets, we are supposed to salam them with the term peace be upon them. Whenever we mention God, Allah, we are supposed to say glory to the most exalted. You also find that same kind of tradition in Judaism, where anytime you mention God, you glorify him. And when you mention the prophets, you praise them as well. It was originally mostly memorized because the Arabs people were illiterate for the most part. They had a language, but not everyone spoke it. Or everyone spoke it, but not everyone read it. It was compiled by Uthman, the third caliph, that is the successor to the Muslim community. So when the Prophet was alive, he was the religious authority. And then when he died, his three companions took over and became the president, the ruler, if you will, of the Muslim state. It is believed that this is the exact same text in every Quran in the world. And I have one of my copies here. This is how you see it correctly. It's much like Hebrew. It's written from right to left, and that's how you read it. So a lot of people see this and they say, oh, it's backwards. It's like, no, this is just Arabic, like Hebrew. It's from right to left. And this is an actual text, and I'm happy to let anyone touch it. Traditionally, we do not allow unbelievers to touch the Quran. And even we as Muslims, we have to be in a ritual state of purity before we touch it. But if it's your only opportunity to see an actual one, I'm happy to let you see it. Next slide, please. Okay, now what I was mentioning before about there are texts that the religion is extrapolated from. So there is the Quran, which is the perfect word of God. And then there are these other 6 books. They are called hadith. That is the sayings, the expressions, the teachings of the Prophet. So you might liken them to the Gospels. They're not exactly that, but you could kind of liken them that. And in these books, it's supposedly that the Prophet said this, he did that, he told this person that, he told this person this was incorrect, etc., etc. So now the thing about these books is this is where we get a lot of the unfortunate things that come out that we see in the media where the Quran is taken out of context. And we have to understand that these 6 books, and there are others as well, these are the most popular ones, that these were literally written hundreds of years after the death of the Prophet. So 100 years from now, if someone found this, I might be 6 feet tall. That's not true. I'm only 5'8", but we can understand how things change over time. Even here from the Quran, in Arabic, in the pure Arabic, there are no vowels. When in the time of Uthman, when they started not editing the Quran, but compiling it, they started adding these little dots and things over and beneath the letters. They're called diacritical marks, but they're basically vowels. They did the same thing in the New Testament of the Bible. See, we have to understand that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we're sisters or cousins, and you find so many things, common threads that run through them. And when you understand that, then you can get a better idea about it. Next slide, please. This, I hope that looking at it, I had shared this yesterday, but I found this slide and I thought that this was so cool because I hope that by the end of this, we'll understand that there's a difference between religion and spirituality. It's nothing wrong with being religious, but if you think that your way is the absolute and only and total way, then you have to realize that the Creator created other people and gave them ideas too. So then, does God make mistakes? No. I mean, we as believers say that. From the Quranic text, one of the things that I find a lot of reference in is there is in the Quran where Allah is creating Adam, if you want to take that literally, like some Jews or some Christians do. I look at it as in the evolutionary sense. Allah is about to give Adam the breath of life, and he tells the angels to bow down and submit to Adam. And it's Iblis, the devil, Shaitan, who says no. But before that, the angels say to Allah, Allah created the angels, and the angels say to Allah, well, you're going to create something in the world that's going to create bloodshed and chaos. These are the angels, the perfect creation of God, who are asking questions of God, which means God wants us to ask questions. And if we seek truthfully, he will give us the answers. A lot of us, unfortunately, we get trapped in this. My pastor told me this, my Rebbe told me this, my imam told me, so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with listening to them because they have a great deal of knowledge. But if they are telling you to hate yourself or not love yourself, they don't have that message for you. They can't give that to you. So please love yourself first. All right, next slide, please. All right, we're going to get into the meat of it now. This is what everyone is so afraid about with gay men. Yes, we can all agree that. This is what they are so terrified about. The irony, I guess you might say, in Islam, because it is so male-dominated, there is not a great deal or a great mention of sex between women. that is frowned upon, just like it's frowned upon for two men. But as we'll see, it did happen. So the story relates back to the prophet Lut in Arabic. We all know the story about Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, I'm going to challenge you, and if anyone watches this, here again, I don't speak Arabic, but I've researched it. In the Arabic text, the names Sodom and Gomorrah do not appear. Allah, whom we as Muslims say is God, says that the two cities, he doesn't give them names. Every word in the Quran, we as Muslims believe, was put there specifically by God, by Allah. Now, if Allah does not mention those two names, why is it that we get into this whole thing about Sodom and Gomorrah? And even sodomy, it's not just anal sex, it's oral sex, it's kind of any sex that deviates from life-giving. But who are they to judge what you do? And many of them do as well, as we'll see. Next slide, please. Okay, we all know jinn, right? The jinn, the genies. Everybody is familiar with Disney's Aladdin, Robin Williams as the genie. Well, in Islam, the jinn are the third class of beings. There's angels, there's jinn, and there's humans. Al-Nasr, men. Now, seeing as we're in the 21st century and we're all questioning whether or not extraterrestrials are real, some Muslims have actually asked the question, and some scholars even say, well, there is the possibility that there could be extraterrestrials. And even the word jinn, D-J-I-N, it's that the jinn, they are hidden beings. And the thing about the jinn is that word jinn comes from jan, which means hidden, so that there should be hidden beings. But the reason, as we can see here, is we as queer people are supposedly related to the al-jinn, and even later on we'll get to the muhanath. And those people did appear even in ancient Arabia. In fact, if you go back to, I believe it is the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Sumeria, you will find references of what we would call cross-dressing people, i.e. transgendered people, i.e. drag queens. So as much as religious prognosticators try to instruct us and say this is something abnormal, human beings have been doing what we've done since the beginning of human beings. There's you can't get around it. It's part of human nature. They just cannot accept it. And so therefore it makes them uncomfortable. So therefore they have to say, you can't do that. Next slide, please. All right, so this one is the Majun. The Majun is the world of the jinn. And so much so that eventually, even in the Muslim world, there was a club culture. That is that thing where, you go out on Saturday night. Here in America, there you would go out on Thursday night and party, because Friday is the day of Allah where you go to Juma and you say your prayers. So the Majun became the world of the demi-monde. That's the world of the nightclub, where you would go and you would sit with beautiful boys who are mentioned in the Quran. Incidentally, that thing about the 72 virgins, that's not in the Quran. That's from that extrapolated text called the Hadith. The Quran does mention about that there will be beautiful servants in paradise, and the way that the language is couched, you can infer from the meaning that there will be some ... And I say ... That's what a friend of mine, a Muslim friend of mine, how we refer to sex, because you're not supposed to talk about that in public, just so you know. But anyways, so the Majun is the demi-monde, that is the nightclub world. And people would go to these, men would go to these nightclubs, and there would be, wait for it, beautiful boys there who would serve them alcohol. No way, you say. It's no. Even in these ancient great Islamic empires, there was partying going on. Next slide, please. Oh no, we're going to go to Anat, the Wikipedia one. I'm sorry, we kind of got this together at the last minute, but thank you for being patient with us. Okay, so this is Wikipedia. Now that word that I mentioned to you before, muhana, that word comes from this polytheistic deity or goddess who was transgender. Now understand that in Islam, there is only one God. One, just like in Christianity, just like in Judaism. So even though the language of Arabic came from other parts of the world, my name, Shamsuddin, means son of religion, but Shams was actually the name of an ancient sun deity from, I believe, ancient Babylon. So words change over time and develop new meanings. So this goddess, who was, we would say, transgendered, became the basis in Arabic for the word that would eventually, which we would say would be transgender, that is mukhana. You can look this word up if you write it down. So I hope that you will, and you can look at these things and you can say, well, I know better. Next, we're going to go to two ways. I believe that one, the internet website that we found. And if we scroll up or down, hopefully to the top. So we're going to discover a character from, or a person. This person was supposed to be a real person in the classical age of Islam. Let's get beyond this dude right here. I think maybe to the top of the page. I just would like for everyone to see the headline. So yes, we're using, in the article, they're using Islamic RuPaul. Is it near the top? So I'm going to read from this book here, which I brought along. I found this book back in the 90s. It is an awesome book. It's still around, but the copies of it are quite expensive now, but I'm a bibliophile and I will plunk down money for a book if it helps. Okay, so maybe once we find the top, I'm gonna read. Two ways, that is two ways, that's how you would say it. A lot of these names they had, ironically, when you translate them, they have these slightly, a little wink, a little nod, so you know what's going on. Was a gender variant, homoerotically inclined muhana, that is transgendered person. Arabic musician named Little Peacock. Two ways. According to Ahmad el-Tassari in The Delight of the Hearts, Two Ways was the first person in Al-Madinah, that is Medina in Arabia, to sing in the classic arable according to the rules of the new music. So right there we see that queer people are always involved in music, lip syncing, dance, these kind of things, that it's the creativeness. It relates back to the jinn, the hidden beings. In fact, when someone is crazy, you refer to them as being mujnan. That, is like mujnan. It means that they're crazy. And the reason why you're crazy, the word jinn is related to genius. There is a thin line between genius and madness. And all of that is supposed to relate back to the idea that people who are creative, especially queer people, we know queer people are the most creative. If you look at all of the artists in history, whether they're classical artists or even modern artists, they are usually the most prolific ones are queer. That's something that we cannot get around. That is a gift. That is a gift. We were put here to help make the world more beautiful. And if you can't understand that, then you don't enjoy a beautiful world. Okay, I guess we didn't make it to the top. But anyway, so that was Two Ways. That was one of the persons that I wanted to. There's no picture now. I just wanted everyone to see the top of the article. Yeah, just the title of it. I'm sorry. Okay, so a Muslim RuPaul at the dawn of the Islamic world, Tuwais and the Mukanab. So this person was actually supposed to be, as I understand it, one of the descendants of one of the prophet's followers. So within the first century, we have someone, I guess you might say, the first gay pop star in Islam, if you will. No, that's a little weird, but there you go. So now after that, now we're going to go to the Arabian Nights. I don't know if anyone saw my performances over the past on Friday or my sitting on the panel yesterday. My drag stage name is Laiylah, like the Eric Clapton song, Alf Walela. Layla Alf Walela is just Alf Layla Walela, 1001 Nights. And Queer Tales in the Arabian Nights. So if you would slowly scroll down that page, these are characters who are listed, fictional characters who are listed in this magnum opus of Middle Eastern fantasy. This was kind of like the Harry Potter of the Muslim world, if you will. Because just as in Harry Potter, you have sorcery and magic and all these other things, you have all of these wonderful tales. So now the question you have to ask yourself is, if queer people don't exist in the Muslim world, why do you have historical references and words and even fictional characters who are written about? That tells you that queer people clearly exist, even in the Muslim world. No matter what all of these talking heads that you see say we don't exist, we exist. Abu Nuwais. Abu Nuwais is a real world poet. If you read some of his actual poetry, you will be shocked. It is romance novel, racy, soft porn erotica. Literally, it's pretty naughty, and there's nothing wrong with that. If we're all adults here, it's okay for you, an adult, to know about these things. There were words, and people wrote about it. No, it's not something that you might talk about on Sunday from the pulpit, your pastor, your minister, your imam, but it existed. And if people talked about it, then there is a historical reference for it. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now we can go to Blair, the young African American Muslim woman in the hijab, in the in the rainbow flag. She's actually given a TED talk and came out in the middle of a Fox News interview. In fact, talking to Tucker Carlson, douchebag, total douchebag. Most of those people on Fox News are douchebags. I'm sorry. So this young woman, beautiful young woman, African American, I believe she might even be, I hate to say this, interracial. Um, I believe she is. She started, she was raised in a relatively Catholic household, and she eventually converted to Islam. And she came out, and I've actually seen a TED talk of hers. So if you can find her online, please look her discussions up. I didn't find any pictures of this man. There is someone by the name of Daiye, Daiye. He is a Muslim chaplain, imam. Literally, he lives his life religiously, and he's even offered to do some marriages. Now, as I said, proving once again whether or not we as queer people exist in the Muslim world. This book is by Scott Siraj al-Haq Hugel. He is an American Muslim white male who identifies as queer, and he wrote this excellent book which breaks it down theologically, far too much for us to do here. But he asks questions of the scholars and gives legitimate answers because he's one who speaks Arabic and has studied all the classical sources. So if you're a reader, you might want to check this book out. This is another great book on the topical on the subject, Islamic homosexualities. This one is one of the earlier ones, and I found this recently. I'm trying to find a copy in hardcover. I'm at that age where I really want hardcover books so that eventually I can pass them on to all of my little queer children because I don't have any of my own, but we got to keep the babies informed too. Finally, I'd like, or not finally, but I'd like to share the slide with, I believe, Islamic homosexualities, that one we found. So this other book, oh, well, actually, this one is a film from 2008. If you, it's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix at one point, and I remember seeing it in 2008, like and rushing home to watch it. So if you want to find something, you can find it. There is this historical reference that, you know, if you look long enough and hard enough, you will find evidence to support any worldview, good, bad, or indifferent. But are you looking for it to harm people, or are you looking for it to give people space to live? And I should hope that we as religious / spiritual people, that we are looking for the truth to give people the space to live as opposed to condemning people. There is the one, can I show them the page, the Bachavazi page? Now, this is one of the unfortunate things that when you have to deal with, it's, I believe it's the YouTube page, Rachel. It's because we have this horrible oppression of queer people in Islam and this segregation of the genders. The best way that I can put it is that if you send men or women to prison, we know these things that happen to people because people have a sexual, natural desire to express themselves sexually. And there's nothing wrong with expressing yourself sexually with someone of the same sex. But people who are not comfortable with that and forced into this situation, if they've ever been curious, this comes out. So now, if we would slowly scroll, you'll see that the Bachavazi, I think this takes place in, it means dancing boys. And it's pretty much what you think it is. It's grown men watching a young boy dance. The boy is clothed, but the boy is dancing in a sexually suggestive way. And it's pedophilia. And it's not that I'm condoning pedophilia in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but that becomes the outcome of when people are told to repress their sexual urges. Unfortunately, here in the West, we know about the many scandals that take place within the Catholic Church amongst priests. And even now we're finding out with young women who were molested by their nuns, their teachers, etc. So we can see that unfortunately, what's that expression that that you should express yourself and not repress yourself? Because what happens when you repress yourself, this comes out. And if you watch anyone, I invite any one of you to please watch these videos. They are difficult, but you will see that this exists in the Muslim world. Even as we say, we don't engage in any shape, form, or fashion of same-sex eroticism. And I know that's a harsh thing to say, but it's there and we have to be aware of it. So to always try and end on a positive point, I want you to know that if there's anyone out here watching this who happens to be queer, gay, and somehow this makes the image over the world, I want you to at least accept yourself. Because if you can't accept yourself, you really, that's the point of self-love. That's where everything begins, because it's you are in this relationship with God. If you're a Christian, embrace your Christianity. If you're a Jew, embrace your Judaism. If you're a Hindu, incidentally, I know you're saying, why are you as a Muslim wearing this symbol of Hinduism? This is a representation of Lord Shiva, one of the three gods in Hinduism, the Trimurti. In Hinduism, there is a trinity. There is the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. Lord Shiva is the destroyer. Some Hindus have speculated that Allah could be a manifestation amongst the Arabs of Lord Shiva. We have to understand that we don't live in a vacuum. Ideas creep across continents and times, and things change. We live in a modern world. We can't live the way we lived 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I'm not saying we need to go out here and commit murder and black magic and all these destructive, horrible things. No, but we have to embrace that we live in a modern world, and we have to listen to science, because science is one of the fingers on the hand of God. I want you to know I want you to love yourself, because it's taken me a very long time to come to this. And I want you to see that there is someone who identifies as queer and as Muslim, and I'm happy with that. I don't want to be anything else. I don't want to be any other color. I don't want to be any other religion. I don't want to be anything other than what God made me to be. If I am wrong, then I will be judged for that. But this is my life. I cannot live it for you. Allah gave me this life. I have to live it for myself. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm not doing this to be disobedient. Even as you do some things that you know that you should not, you do them nonetheless, because that is your path in life. This is my path in life. This is our path in life, and we have to accept ourselves. So to bring it home on a positive note, I know you're saying, well, this seems kind of down, but this is something that really needs to be mentioned. But how can you find the joy in your life as a queer person? You have to surround yourself with friends and loved ones who will support you. If you can't have that in your own life from your family members, then you have to find family elsewhere. In Islam, we are taught to never ignore our family or leave them. I'm not saying that, but you have to find happiness in yourself. That's the end of my speech, and I'm opening up to questions if anyone has anything that hopefully I can answer for you or can share with you or point you in the right direction. Please. I have a mic and questions on the screen, or anyone in the audience. Yes, my friend.
What was the name of the woman that was in the hijab?
Her name is Blair, Blair, Imani, like the model, Iman, And yeah, like I said, I saw her on Fox News, and I was like, wow, she is awesome. And incidentally, she said even when she was coming out on national television, she was getting death threats on her phone from people. And hey, even getting ready for this, I had people, sending me negative comments. I think that's kind of the price we have to pay for telling the truth. If you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus died on the cross by telling the truth. As a Muslim, Prophet Muhammad had his own people throw stones at him and dump their garbage and their feces on him because he was telling them to love their creator. That, unfortunately, is the price that we have to pay for being truth seekers and lovers of the divine. But then you have to also think that myself as a performer, or those of us who are artistic, the payment that we receive is the joy from our fellow queer people when we do our performances, when we share our art, and you hear that, yeah, so those finger snaps, that's where you have to find your payment. And I'm so grateful that I got to share these things with you. I know my slide was not as perfect, and maybe if I'm invited back next year, I could get it a little more professional, but I'm so grateful that I got to share all of this information with you. And if there's any books or any questions, please talk to me. That's what I'm here for. Thank you so much, everyone.